Jeopardy's team, from top executives to staffers, was not heartbroken over Mayim Bialik's dismissal from the game show, a studio source tells the U.S. Sun. Mayim, 49, announced she'd been let go from the series in December 2023, making former champion Ken Jennings the sole host. Jeopardy! Never released an additional official statement after they confirmed her exit last December, nor has she. So, the exact circumstances surrounding Mayim's dismissal have in large part remained unclear. Earlier this month, bosses removed the last traces of her from their website, making it clear they're sticking with Ken but leaving some fans still wondering what went on behind closed doors. While it's no secret that many fans preferred Ken's host style while the stars switched off, the U.S. Sun has been told that nearly everyone who works for the show was also closer to him. The source said Mayim's lack of a winning bond with production compared to Ken, who became famous on the show he now hosts, contributed to her exit. Didn't make friends. Mayim was never a perfect fit and she really didn't have great relations with the executives in charge of the studio, the U.S. Sun's source claimed. They were always more comfortable dealing with Mayim's representatives instead of Mayim herself. And Mayim's personality is no nonsense. She's not somebody you can win over with a lavish lunch at Soho House or something. The source said that staffers have tiptoed around the topic of her exit. Nobody at Sony refers to Mayim's exit as a firing out of respect for her and her team. However, while the show's tight-knit writers and judges respected the actress, she reportedly never tried getting to know them. She didn't fit in well, but she also wasn't around much apart from taping days because she had significant other commitments during her run on the show. Did she make a bunch of friends on the crew or among the Sony executives? No. That's another place where Ken has an edge because he's spent so many years associated with the show. He has real supporters inside the organization that Mayim simply never did. The U.S. Sun has reached out to Mayim Bialik's representatives for comment. Goodbye I am. Ken and Mayim were announced as the new co-hosts in July 2022, succeeding the late great Alex Trebek. It seemed like the iconic game show had finally filled the big shoes of the irreplaceable Alex, but it wasn't so. Mayim initially walked out last spring in solidarity with the WGA strike, and as Ken thrived in the sole host role, she would never return. Sony, the show's parent company, cut ties with the Big Bang Theory actress. The news came from Mayim herself, who wrote on Instagram on December 15, 2023, that she had been told she'd no longer be hosting the program. An hour later, Jeopardy! Shared its only statement since, a similar-looking Instagram message confirming her dismissal. Jeopardy's showrunner, Michael Davies, later cited consistency as the reason she was let go and said Ken won the job regarding viewer preference. It was previously reported that they were each tied to $4 million contracts, which Ken presumably still makes. Some fans are also still curious if there's a possibility Mayim could return even for a special. It's not likely, the U.S. Sun's source said. Mayim initially walked out the previous spring in solidarity with the WGA strike. When she returned, she reportedly wanted to be given top billing over Ken, which wasn't happening. The bottom line is that she wanted the sole hosting job and Sony wasn't willing to give that to her, and she decided to walk away because of that, the source continued. As to Sony's public reaction, I don't think they were surprised with Mayim making the announcement herself, but the top TV executive at Sony, Catherine Pope, is incredibly paranoid about any kind of bad press and is always trying to keep up appearances. The timing of Sony's statement is certainly consistent with how this executive likes to sweep any problem under the rug as quickly as humanly possible. Sony's statement was absolutely meant to close the door on the Mayim era and not open up another can of worms. Nobody involved with the show is talking like Mayim is coming back anytime soon. I think the bigger question is, would Mayim say yes if invited back as a fill-in? I'm not sure that she would. Not enough fan support. The source also shared that she may have stayed co-host if Mayim had more fan support. I do think if Mayim had a lot more support from fans and from the online Jeopardy! Community, which she certainly did have during her years on Big Bang Theory, her time at the show would have ended differently, if at all. The best thing about Ken Jennings is that everybody who watches Jeopardy! Knows exactly who he is. Mayim Bialik was never one to shy away from a challenge. As an actress, neuroscientist, and advocate, she had spent her life navigating complex worlds, both on and off the screen. But nothing had prepared her for the storm that awaited her at the helm of one of television's most iconic game shows, Jeopardy! Star. When Mayim was announced as the new host of Jeopardy! It was meant to be a dream come true. The producers believed that her intelligence, charm, and well-known love for learning would make her a perfect fit for the role. On paper, it made sense. A PhD in neuroscience, decades of experience in front of the camera, and a genuine passion for knowledge seemed like the ideal combination for a Jeopardy! Host. Yet, as the old saying goes, things don't always go according to plan. From the moment Mayim stepped onto the Jeopardy! Set, there was an undercurrent of tension. While the studio lights were bright, the atmosphere behind the scenes was anything but warm. The show's crew, many of whom had worked on Jeopardy! For years, were a tight-knit group. They had been through the highs and lows of the show's history, from its revival in the 1980s to the tragic passing of the beloved Alex Trebek. Their bond was strong, and newcomers were often met with skepticism. Mayim, despite her accolades and accomplishments, was no exception to this. She quickly realized that she didn't fit in with the established dynamics of the crew. Her presence was met with polite smiles, but there was an unspoken distance that she couldn't ignore. Conversations would quiet as she entered the room, and side glances became a common occurrence. It was as if the crew had silently decided that she wasn't one of them. The tension only grew as Mayim tried to assert her vision for the show. She had ideas, new segments, a fresh approach to the presentation, and a desire to make the game more accessible to a younger audience. But every suggestion was met with resistance. The crew, fiercely protective of the show's legacy, saw her ideas as disruptions to a formula that had worked for decades. What Mayim viewed as innovation, they saw as unnecessary changes that could alienate their loyal audience. Mayim's frustrations grew. She felt as though she was walking on eggshells, constantly trying to prove herself to a group that seemed determined to keep her at arm's length. The pressure mounted as her every move was scrutinized, every decision second-guessed. There were whispers among the crew that Mayim was difficult to work with,